This will be the last Lautas vs. Casagrandes project for a while, obviously, and even though that I'm not done with those two shows until Summerpalooza 5 Steven Universe Marathon for next month, at the very least, this is literally the only project I have in mind when it comes to doing a sequel towards the last Lenny vs. Carlota video that I did last June. Similar to the last Lautas vs. Casagrandes project involving these two characters, it really feels out of nowhere to have an episode centering around Lori getting her driver's license, while Carlota has a disability when it comes to her not doing the right thing correctly. The only difference is that in the Casagrandes episode Shortcut, she tries to improve and tries to attempt at it, but considering that in the Undivided Attention episode, well, she's capable of doing homework, it's just that she is mostly addicted towards the app game. It really feels like that they really took Carlota's character seriously in this episode. Driver's Dread is a sequel towards Driving Miss Hazy from Season 1. The only difference is that Lori isn't hateable like she was from Season 1, and this is mostly focusing on Lenny trying to get her driver's license while getting tips from other characters, while in the last episode, Lincoln was trying to help out Lenny getting her driver's license through a video game. In Shortcut, despite having great capabilities when it comes to makeup and whatnot, the biggest disadvantage that Carlota has is a haircut, or mainly shaving in order to make it really accurate and perfect from the customer's vision and request. To be perfectly real with you, there was not a lot to say about this episode, other than the biggest difference is that CJ is helping Carlota out since that he knows how to cut hair correctly. Yes, Lenny may have some advices from other characters, but considering that they're not the main character like CJ was from the Casagrandes episodes, it really made me think that they instantly wanted a CJ and Carlota episode, which isn't really a bad idea regardless. These two episodes' similarities centers around the main character Lenny and Carlota when it comes to the disadvantages of driving and haircutting. Granted, we can agree that driving is really important when it comes to preventing accidents, but when it comes to Carlota's episode, at the same time, we have never cut hair and we're never going to be good at it because, to tell you the truth, hair being part of someone else's body is a lot more complicated and slightly serious in comparison to cutting something that is mainly a mannequin. Which is somewhat weird to think that Lenny brings out Tanya, who's a mannequin, but that's probably the fact that she misses Lori to the point that she needs a buddy to be with her, or a lady to be with her when it comes to being close to Lori as a sister. Believe me when I say this, is that the reason why I do not talk about Tanya whatsoever is mainly the fact that this is mainly a gimmick that they are using for Lenny in the newer seasons, unless if it did happen in the previous seasons. When people do not understand Carlota's character when it comes to people who moved on from the show, doesn't realize that Carlota wants to be around celebrities and showcase her talents when it comes to being around celebrities. While Lenny, even though that she has different goals, one of the goals that she doesn't have is being around celebrities. There is a Season 6 episode centering around the two that I still haven't seen yet, but judging of how that it centers around the two trying to get along, and it centers around Carlota being really furious when it comes to Lenny having the brighter ideals in her, mainly upstaging her. Carlota's passion just isn't the same as Lenny's passion, and to tell you the truth, knowing full well that Sergio just ruins everything for Carlota, I can guarantee you that without Sergio, though, they wouldn't be able to do the whole misunderstanding, or the main character lied on being a good hair cutter, only to realize there was one of those siblings who did most of the work. Honestly, for how Lori was betrayed in Driving Miss Hazy, she is still worse in comparison to Sergio, even though that Sergio is really annoying in this episode. But to give Driver's Dread credit, Lenny is the only sibling who is old enough to get a driver's license. Granted, Luna can get a driver's license, but I don't think that there's ever a chance, well, we're going to see an episode centering around that. With this being a sequel towards the season 1 episode, it really tries to showcase that Lenny is trying to do it and taking the whole driving thing seriously in comparison to Driving Miss Hazy. Well, she was a 100% airhead the entire time. While in this episode, she is an airhead, but at the same time, she's trying to focus when it comes to driving. But then again, one of the teachers who are helping her out, mainly Mr. Bohofner, I'm still not on board with. Knowing the fact that he has a job as a teacher at middle school, all the while being a gym teacher, and now he's helping out students on driving, it just makes me question on how poor this person is, or the fact that the Royal Road system is completely broken when it comes to people not focusing on what's really going on. Seriously. Principal Romandez isn't really the only person who is dumb after thinking of how the Royal Road system is this broken. When it comes to Mr. Grouse being the second person that Lenny goes to, he ends up falling asleep. To tell you the truth, knowing full well that Mr. Grouse only thinks about the Loud family's lasagna than anything else, I don't usually blame him on that, but at the same time when he falls asleep, it just makes me think that he would have been a lot more better if he didn't fall asleep in giving Lenny actual advice. Because to tell you the truth, even though that Mr. Grouse has a reason on being grumpy when it comes to his development from the Christmas episode, at the very least, it wouldn't kill the Loud writers to make him a lot more helpful in getting along with Lenny. Because to tell you the truth, even though that Lenny needed a boss when it comes to getting her driver's license, it would have improved Lenny's character a lot more. Granted, the pacing when it comes to her getting advices from other characters is as it is, well, aside from Mr. Bohofner, but if you really think about it, you would probably want to see Lori helping out Lenny, but considering that it centers around Lenny being alone while Lori is still in college, it really feels like that they're trying a lot more to have Lenny be independent, but at the same time, if people wanted to see a Lori and Lenny episode, considering that there was a moment centering around the two when it came to the Vanzilla episode from season 2, this would have been a perfect candidate involving the two, but considering that around the time people were voting for Lisa and Lucy, this has to center around Lisa's invention on helping out Lenny after she uses her invention for Lily's scooter, which for me personally kind of sums up in the fact that they just wanted Lenny to have the upper hand, but considering of what happens towards the end when it comes to her meeting with Lori at the mall, they probably wanted to do something that would establish Lenny's character on getting her driver's license by focusing on the road and doing it all on her own. Which for me personally sums up onto why the Casagrandes episode for having CJ as the helper of Carlota made it a lot more better. Believe me, it may be difficult for me to see the seriousness of driving, considering that I've been in the car multiple times in comparison to haircuts, which is really obvious. At the very least, the shortcut episode actually showcases that even though that Carlota doesn't really improve when it comes to haircuts, at the very least, CJ is actually helping out and is actually doing what Lori would have done if she was one of the main characters of Driver's Dread. Granted, you can make the argument that Carlota didn't do much while CJ did most of the work in comparison to the Loud House episode where Lenny is driving at all times. At the very least, she would have been a lot more complicated to work with if she accidentally ruined someone else's hair, since that she accidentally ruined Carl's hair in the beginning of the episode. For me personally, even though that CJ's main objective is to help out Carlota, at the very least, he still helps out Carlota, even though that Carlota isn't doing anything better when it comes to haircuts and whatnot. Trust me when I say this, even though that the objective of what Lenny has in whole episode is a lot more bigger than Carlota's, at the very least, Bad Hair Day still exists, even in cartoons. Considering that bad hair days can instantly have so much effect on having a really bad haircut, all the while ruining a wedding that is gonna happen that Carlota needs to do, and the fact that CJ is willing to help out speaks anxiety when it comes to Carlota's predicament. Even though that the whole bridesmaids getting covered in hair is honestly random, and all honestly, at the same time, it still centers around the wedding that if Carlota is in charge when it comes to doing haircuts, it will probably be the worst job that she'll ever get, all the while possibly ruining the haircuts of many when it comes to bridesmaids, including the wedding girl. Believe me, if you can't convince me that Carlota will do everything on her own when it comes to succeeding in haircuts while preventing bad hair days at weddings, then as far as I'm concerned, you don't even know what anxiety she's feeling in comparison to Lenny, who had a difficult time in the Boss Maybe episode, but at the same time, it's not really anxiety-inducing in comparison to this episode. Seriously, imagine Carlota focusing on giving the bride a really great haircut despite being unprepared and untrained. That is honestly a lot more serious when it comes to an important day for a bride's life, knowing full well that it centers around her getting married. You can't argue me with that. I guess the only thing that's worth mentioning is that when Lisa's invention gets corrupted, well not really corrupted, but mainly getting malfunctioned, Lenny tries to drive Vanzilla on her own, which is good, but at the same time, I really felt like that if it was a lot more longer while cutting down moments centering around the people helping out Lenny, it would have made it a lot more memorable. Granted, I understand that they probably want to showcase that Lenny can be able to handle driving on her own and figuring out the steps, but keep in mind, considering that she becomes a chaotic driver in later episodes after this, I'm starting to convince that they probably wanted to do it the rushful way rather than the character development way. I'm overthinking it, but the reason onto why the Casagrandes episode is better in comparison to the Loud Test episode is because Carlota wants more when it comes to her passion, and it's the fact that she wants to hang out with celebrities by helping them out with makeup, but the biggest step of them all is the haircut. Which, in all honesty, when it comes to Lenny's goal by hanging out with Lori when it comes to getting her driver's license, there's nothing wrong with that, but in comparison to Carlota's goal, it's a lot more huge. Driving is a lot more important than haircuts, but when it comes to execution, the Casagrandes episode is better than the Loud House. Even though that people may say that Driver's Dread is better than Driving Miss Hazy, at the very least, just because these two episodes are from separate eras, mainly Driving Miss Hazy from the Chris Savino era, while this era is mainly the non-Savino era, I still can't say that everything that what Chris Savino did is all bad, and vice versa, because the same thing applies to the non-Savino era, where the people who can't be able to have a focused vision to make the episodes on their own vision good when they're making so many bad episodes. For me personally, if they're focusing on the kids too much and not focusing on what made the Loud House really good, there was a reason onto why these eras aren't really the best ideas, and it shouldn't apply to every single cartoon. You can't have the same thing forever, but at the same time, if you don't eliminate the bad aspects on people's criticisms on those, then as far as I'm concerned, it really shows onto why Nickelodeon only cares about the kids, but mainly the money, and I'm not quoting Mr. Krabs from the SpongeBob episode, because I can't stand that. So with that being said, the Casagrandes gets a point over the Loud House episode, and it will take me several months until I get back to doing this project involving Loud House and Casagrandes. I am still going to review episodes centering around it, along with the Primos show that's coming out next month, but at the same time, still no Loud House vs. Casagrandes project. I'm giving the Loud House episode a 7.25 out of 10, while the Casagrandes episode gets an 8.25 out of 10.